Go ahead.
Well, good morning, everybody. Welcome to Spiritual Matters Thursday here at the Daily Huddle. I'm your host, Dr. Monikah Ogando, and part of my brain is here and part of my brain is not, which is very, very, very relevant to today's topic because we're going to be talking about, is seasonal affective disorder a spiritual condition? What? Plot twist. We're going to talk about how spiritual it is, or it isn't, maybe, I don't know, we'll debate it, to have seasonal affective disorder. What even is it? And how do you know that you have it? And what does it mean if you have it? So we're going to talk all about all of that today in Spiritual Matters Thursdays. Welcome to the Daily Huddle. Happy Thursday. Happy new moon in Capricorn. Happy first, no, it's the second Thursday of the year by this time. But we keep celebrating. We keep celebrating. Every Thursday is a chance to celebrate because we get a chance to get together, you and I, and we get to explore some heady things, some spiritual things. I get to challenge some assumptions. You get to be in community once again. Can you ever get enough of the Daily Huddle community? I don't know. I don't know. The data isn't conclusive. So we want to talk today about, is seasonal affective disorder a spiritual condition? Now, how many of you know what seasonal affective disorder is? Do you even know? Say one in the chat if you know what it is. Put a one in the chat if you know what it is. And I'm going to tell you what I think it is because, in doing my research for this episode, I was like, well, you got to know what you're talking about before you start talking about it, child. So seasonal affective disorder is akin to depression a little bit, but it happens during certain times of the year. It's a type of depression that usually happens around the fall or winter time. And it's thought that the shorter days and the lesser exposure to light that you have in your body may trigger a chemical change in your brain, which then leads to symptoms of depression. Now, like many biological things, it affects some more than others, right? So, for example, menstrual cycles affect women more than men, right? And the size of your brain, the size of your heart, the connections of your nervous system affect you differently, or I should say, impact you differently than other things. So with seasonal affective disorder, it is typically what I have discovered, let me say that, what I have discovered is that those symptoms of depression that happen in the fall and the winter is because we're trying to do something that we're not designed to do, right? We have lived for many generations now in a culture that claims linear thinking, linear thought, linear activity, the same thing. We don't switch based on the seasons. We kind of like keep it the same. You go to work at the same time, you wake up at the same time, you go to sleep at the same time, you have the same activities. And what happens is your body's like, wait, what? We're not switching? Imagine if you decided that your uniform in your life was going to be a tank top, shorts, and sandals, right? But you live up of the northern hemisphere and it's December in Chicago. you're going to be suffering, pal. Right? People around the equator are going to be fine. They're not going to notice a difference. But you in Chicago or in Boston or in places like that, you're going to be freezing. You're going to be like, oh God, when it's over? And you don't want to be around people. You don't want to be outside, right? You want to be sleeping. You want to conserve the warmth of your body, etc. So if you can see how that happens on a biological, on a physical level, that's what's happening on a mental and spiritual level with seasonal affective disorder. We're not supposed to be up so early, up so late, always burning the midnight oil, always in activity, right? Even though the always in activity has been taken from the biological patterns of men, even men are not supposed to be in everyday activity like this. There is a time, Ecclesiastes in the Bible says there's a time for war and there's a time for peace. There's a time to rise and there's a time to rest. And so what I want to say about it is your body is always giving you hints, or I should say, your soul is always giving you hints through your body. And if you were to make the assertion, as I do, speaking of check yourself before you wreck yourself, audit your assumptions. If you were to make the assertion that all physical disease is a spiritual symptom, then instead of popping pills, you get curious about what is my soul trying to teach me? Where am I off? Where am I misaligned? Such that I have a cold. It's not just because of the time of the year. There's something else going on, right? And so I find it very curious. I find it very curious that did we even talk about those things? I don't know, 100 years ago. Did we even talk about seasonal affective disorder 100 years ago? Depression 100 years ago? I'm not sure. I don't know what the lexicon is. The jury is still out on that. But today, when we are more aware of the connection between mind, body, and spirit, we can do some things about it. And we always say in the show that awareness is the mother of choice, right? And so when you have awareness, you can make different choices. Do you ever, have you ever encountered this? Have you ever dealt with this? Have you ever noticed that your mood or your energy levels change depending on the seasons? Or do you just kind of like, trough through that because you're a leader and you're supposed to da-da-da and circumstances should not matter and you should be senior to your circumstances. What's your philosophy on this?
I'll go first.
Yeah.
I don't stay the same. I
Uh-huh.
do exactly what you say. I'm in that seasonal, cyclical, going down earlier, spending more time in bed, not getting up as early, doing all the things you got to do to give your body the opportunity to rest. Because you don't get looking like this at 60 by driving it hard every day. You got to keep taking the breaks, So, yeah, no doubt,
I
no doubt.
love it. That was amazing. Thank you, Robin. That's awesome. Yeah, you make a point here about downshifting, the kind of like going down gear, just like you would with a car when um depending on whether you're going downhill or uphill. I just got this visual of a mechanical car. Is that how you guys call it? Like a stick shift, right?
Yeah.
So, for example, if I'm going up the hill and it requires more of me, I'm gonna go all the way. I'm gonna go fourth, fifth gear, right? Especially if I'm going on the highway, fifth gear, etc. But if I'm going downhill, or if I'm just getting out of the garage or whatever, first gear will do. Don't crash into nothing.
I take my hands off and just let it roll, baby.
You know what I mean? Just go ahead for a second. Pump the brakes, right? So, who else? Who else has something to share about this? Maybe you noticed it and you didn't know it had a name, and you thought that you were just weird and that you just, you needed more sleep, or that needed more coffee, or what's the situation with you in regards to seasonal affective disorder? And let me just say, while I'm waiting for someone to raise their hand, I take issue, just to put it out there, full disclosure, I take issue with calling it disorder. Because a lot of the things that we talk about that are disorders are just the body trying to regulate itself, bring itself into alignment with the soul. That we call it a disorder implies that there's something that we shouldn't be doing or aligning with. And the only thing I can think of is it's only a disorder to a capitalistic patriarchal society. It's like, no, you're supposed to be at work. You're supposed to be on. What's wrong with you? Why are you sleeping? So, who else has something?
In nature, they call it hibernation. It's natural. It's not a disorder.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. And have you noticed that there's a common, like the lingo around it, the conversation around it has increased? I've noticed a lot of thoughts online about like, oh, January isn't even the new year. And I know you guys in the Daily Huddle were like, we know that. Dr. Monikah has been saying that for 2 years. Well, I've been saying it for 2 years here because I've been here for 2 years. I've been saying it for way longer than that. Tell me something, Gio. Tell me something good.
Yeah, I also take issue with the word disorders. It's a label that encapsulates people, boxes people, or it would box me if I see it that way. I do don't I can't quite my way of looking at things by default can't quite accommodate to seasons shift me. Um, if if maybe I missed something at the beginning of the conversation, um, but that you may have addressed, but I'm going to say it this way.
Uh-huh.
When I think about the seasons that shift me, or that my soul is talking to me in some degree, but I don't normally speak that way. I don't speak soul language. I don't know if I have a soul per se.
Mm-hmm.
Certainly a feeling or a particular emotion. Which,
Sure.
I don't see it as seasons. I see it, or maybe the way I see seasons is in the circumstances I have unconsciously or in some way unaware I have in an unaware way I have put myself into.
Mm-hmm.
And it has created a season for my life that for me to be present and for me to learn something from.
Yeah.
But I certainly when I
Uh-oh.
Did we lose Gio?
He went somewhere else. Oh, you're muted now, Gio.
So can you hear me now?
Yes, now I can hear you. Start again. Not all the way,
Where did I
just the last couple of sentences.
So when I look back, when I'm able to look back at different seasons of my life, I can see that I can be in many ways responsible for the creation of those seasons. And that kind of self-awareness gives me peace
Yes.
of mind. It
Yes.
gives me peace of mind. But I can't quite disconnect myself as the source in many ways of many of the seasons I have created in my life,
Mm-hmm.
consciously and unconsciously. That's what it was triggering for me in this
Mm-hmm.
conversation
Mm.
a little bit.
When you are talking about the seasons in your life, do you mean like there's a season of creation, there's a season of discord, there's a season of production, there's a season of relationships? Do you mean like that?
Well, yes, and I also wasn't sure if you were pointing to only the seasons. For example, winter in the U.S. involves Christmas, but in Argentina it's actually summer.
Yes.
So I wasn't sure what seasons you were
Yes,
pointing.
that's what I meant. That's what I meant. And that's how you know when something is not based on universal truth, because it is not universally true for everybody, right? Somebody in the North Hemisphere has a different experience of December than somebody in the Southern Hemisphere. And depending on the culture, they have different holidays around it. And depending on their
Mm,
socioeconomic status, they might have access to celebrations that they and the others may not. And so that's how you know that it's not a universal truth, because it doesn't apply universally. And and I think it's such a great point that you're bringing in terms of like our own personal seasons, right?
mm,
Um, because there have been times, I don't remember what author said this, but I heard somewhere an author say there are years that ask questions, and then there are years that answer them. And I just thought,
mm,
wow, that's a downwritable, that's a tweetable.
mm,
Because in my experience, there have been years that have demanded, that have asked questions, and that I didn't feel like I had answers to. And then there are years that gave me some perspective, that gave me some answers that I was looking for. And I was like, well, where were you 3 years ago or whatever, right?
mm,
In the same way, I think that there are seasons of our lives when we get to, and it may be a year, it may be a month, it may be cyclical like that. Everybody has different cycles in the way. Um, but if you were to look at, for example, how, let's take astrology as an example, not as the truth, but as an example. In astrology, the sun moves every month, it moves to a different sign. And depending on your own astrological chart, that sun lands on a particular area or house in your chart. So it stands to reason to think that for that month, you're supposed to focus on wherever the sun is in your chart, right? And so um, right now, the sun is about to move to Aquarius. Where is Aquarius in your chart? For me, it's in my first house. For you, it might be your fifth or whatever. And so then for me, I'm concerned about first house issues the same month that you're worried about fifth house issues, right? Even though it's January for the both of us, we both have a different focus because we have different seasons in our life. And so that's one example, one modality where you can see different people are up to different things. And this is one of the reasons why I beg of you to audit your assumptions all the time, because you may be using yourself as a benchmark to evaluate somebody else's positivity, negativity, professionalism, maturity, et cetera, et cetera. And it's like you are nobody's benchmark but your own. So, it's an irrelevant measuring stick when it comes to somebody else.
mm.
Thank you, Gio, for that commentary. Appreciate you. Who else has
Thank you for
something?
creating this conversation.
Yeah. Who else has something?
I wanted to add something.
Yeah.
I as somebody else raises their hand.
Uh-huh. No, you're fine.
Um, Given the holiday season, December per se here in my life, given the social connection to it around nos love, appreciation, also nostalgic, um, it it does trigger for me a conversation of it is sort of a season where it dramatizes emotions and many more people feel down and deep about what life is and isn't for them. And certainly for me, it is a season of appreciation for me.
The winter is?
And the holidays, the one that we just went through.
Mhm.
And for me, I kind of like, and this is kind of a weird thing to say, but I kind of like being sad on the holidays. Like I like it. Like I want to get a drink and I want to put sad music and I want to smoke a cigarette and I want to think of my parents and I want to think of my children and I want to think of the people I love and I want to be sad. This is my sad season and I don't want anybody to make me happy. And and it is a personal way of doing it, right?
Yes,
But it is a season for me to be sad and I really like it.
I like it.
And
Good for
I'm
you.
this is the first time I'm getting it off my chest.
Right here in the Daily Huddle, you heard it first, people. That's great. That's fantastic. I think you bring up a great point here. One that we don't hear very often is about I want to be sad, right? That it's like we sometimes have such resistance to certain emotions that we'll numb it down with food or with shopping or with other people's company or with TV shows. Or I can't tell you how much Netflix probably has data on this, or any other streaming service probably has data on our binge numbers go up on certain months because people are over here trying to numb themselves down by watching, there's all their series in one day or whatever. And I think it's important that you brought that up, that it's like we embrace your darker emotions because they're here for a reason too. Where would you put them, right? Unless you gave them room to roam. That's the first thing that I want to say about what you shared. And then the second thing is that it's very easy to fall into that melancholy. It sounded like what you were talking about of the season, because there's a reason why there are roughly 28 holidays, depending on the culture, depending on the religious tradition, between October and January. There's a reason for that. As fall becomes even darker and deeper, and we go into winter, etc., it is a time to connect with, to go internal, to get out of the street, come back home to the hearth, right? And so, yeah, there is a time for connection. There's also a time for isolation, depending on who you have around your circle. And there is a time to just be quiet, just go to sleep. Go get the stuff that you already harvested from back in July and August, which is the height of summer, right? That's why they call the dog days of summer. You're supposed to be picking up all your harvest and putting it away so that it can take you through the winter. And planting the harvest for the next, so that in the spring it begins to bloom and you can see it again. So thank you for pointing that out, Gio. That was beautiful. Who else has something? Do you find that you have more energy in the winter time? That you have more get up and go? Maybe you're a rebel like that. Like in comparison to the conversation we're having. Tell me, I want to know. I want to find out about you.
I've always been a rebel when it comes to all of it. So whether it's an energy level, I love the cold weather. I was born and raised in the Northeast, and when it would snow and we could go out and tromp around in that. And then as I got older, we'd, have our little flask with us in the afternoons out in the snow, whatever we were doing, whether it was recreation or cutting down trees or firewood or whatever. I just have really good memories of that. And so, Gio, I applaud you with the, wanting to just feel funk, right? Like it's the time to be in the funk, right? But I think I would challenge it. It's not melancholy or sad. It's just your reflective time because you talked about thinking of your family and your dad and having a cigar, or a cigarette. Yeah, it's just that time, right? It's that time to allow yourself to regroup and hibernate a little bit and not care what anybody else thinks. But I've been a rebel about all of it because I've never towed the party line with any of it, right? So, I just kind of wish more people could get that, be less intense, slow down a little bit. Like you said last year, Dr. Monikah, at this time we were talking about it, and you said the trees shut down, the grass shuts down. All the plants know it's time to take a break and regroup and pull back into their roots and get their juices centered and get everything ready to bring forth in the spring when it's time to start growing and putting out new fruit. So I remember that conversation very clearly because it gave me the freedom to go, yeah, I can just hunker down and stay in my slippers all day today. I'm going to have another hot cocoa instead of making it a water. It's like that. Oh yeah, I'm 100% there. So energy level, me, I'm 100% always. So, and the snow and the cold and the dark, that doesn't slow me down at all. But maybe that's because I do shift into a lower gear and just take it a little easier. And so I still have the energy when I do need it. But yeah. I'm all out of place right now because we're in a condo. Our house is being worked on. So that's why I'm on my laptop in an odd location. But but I've had the energy here too, right? We're dealing
Yeah.
with our dogs, and I'm getting more walking in because I don't have a big backyard for them to go run in. And so it's all this, just changing up. But it's that time of year to just kind of be in that. You know what I think it is? The holidays and the cold weather, it kind of feels like I'm almost a little displaced, right?
Mhm.
Like things aren't just the way they're supposed to be. It's cold. You have to put on more clothes. And all it just kind of changes and shifts everything. Maybe not
Yeah.
displaced, but shifted, right? It's just shifted a little bit. And so I just roll with it in that manner and enjoy it and get
Yeah.
ready for when the sun's going to come back out and we're going to be running around in our shorts and flip-flops again.
Exactly. Awesome. Thank you. You mentioned, get ready to come back out in the springtime. And I have heard the discourse that the springtime is the new year. And can I just tell you, you heard it here first, that the idea that the new year begins in March is a very masculine way of looking at it. Tell me what you mean, Dr. Monikah. I'm gonna tell you. I'm gonna tell you. When a woman gets pregnant, she doesn't start showing right away. Have you noticed? When a woman gets pregnant, she usually doesn't even want to tell people until after the third trimester, right? And depending on her biology and just her age and just a whole bunch of different factors, she may not even start showing until about the fourth, fifth, or even maybe even the sixth month. For my first pregnancy, I did not start showing until my 6th month. So I kept it hidden from a lot of people for a long time because I didn't want them to know I was pregnant. I was 18 at the time, child. That's another sermon for another Sunday. So the time of new beginning, if we were to take that pregnancy analogy, is when she first got pregnant, not when you start seeing the belly. By the time you see the belly, it's been cooking for a while, right? So it's the same thing with our New Year cycle. By the time that things start blossoming in the spring, it's been cooking for a while. This thing started, take the calendar back from the 9 o'clock position to the 3 o'clock position. It started back in the fall equinox. The fall equinox is I assert, okay, I'm not telling you this like a cosmic capital T truth. I assert that that September fall equinox is the new year that begins a new cycle. It just has to go through the feminine, the underbelly of the clock first before it comes up all the way from 9 o'clock to noon. By the time that it comes up 9 o'clock to noon, the sun's full out. You can clearly see it, right? And so take that analogy and ponder on that, and then tie it to observing your emotions, your moods, your energy levels. Nowadays, I think we are socially out of the days when we say Happy New Year to everybody. It's like, when do you stop saying it? In February? Do you stop saying it after January? Like, when is it just like, okay, that's enough, Happy New Year, right? Um, so just notice your own cycles, your own seasons and moods and activity levels, energy levels, etc. And then decide that you're gonna honor them. If you, like me and like Robin, are into hibernation and into hunkering down, etc., set it up so that you can sleep longer. And if you can't get up later, then go to sleep earlier at least, so that you can honor your body's need for rest. Hydrate a little bit more with your teas and so forth. Robinson cycles. And give yourself some time for reflection, whether that be just staring out the window, just sipping on your tea and thinking, or pondering on the trees outside, or whatever your outside scenery is, or journaling, or recording your own voice, etc. There are ways for you to be with yourself. And if you notice some discomfort in that, sit in it for a little bit before you decide to interrupt yourself. Because maybe the discomfort is trying to teach you something. So thank you so much, everybody, for being here. I appreciate you. Of course, love generously, laugh, stress less, eat more plant-based, exercise. Remember that twerking is a spiritual exercise. And of course, give of yourself, your time, your energy. Get at least 7 hours of sleep. Lord have mercy. Lord have mercy, get at least 7 hours of sleep. That's really just, you're doing this for the public, not even for yourself. And then, of course, audit your assumptions. Always check yourself before you wreck yourself. We love you. See you next time.
Thank you, family. Thank you.
One love, guys. One love.
Take it easy, everybody.
Thank you.
Good
Love you
seeing you,
all.
Stan.
You too, Robin.